The courtroom was packed, the air thick with tension. All eyes were on Detective Lisa Carter, one of the city's best. She'd spent years fighting for justice, putting criminals behind bars, and standing tall in the face of corruption. But today, she wasn't here as a detective. She was here as a witness, ready to testify against a powerful man, a man with deep connections, a man the system was protecting. And the person standing in her way, Judge Victoria Langston. From the moment Lisa took the stand, she could feel it, the hostility, the smirks exchanged between the judge and the defense attorney, the way her words were twisted to make her look incompetent. Judge Langston wasted no time in making a mockery of her. With a smug smile, she cut Lisa off mid-sentence, dismissing her years of experience with a wave of her hand. "Detective Carter, let's not pretend you're an expert on the law," she scoffed. Laughter rippled through the courtroom. Lisa clenched her fists, but she held her ground. The judge's attacks didn't stop there. She questioned Lisa's credibility, mocked her background, and even suggested that she was making up evidence to gain attention. Every word dripped with arrogance, every insult carefully placed to break Lisa down in front of the jury. And for a moment, it seemed to be working. The detective could feel the weight of the stares, the whispers, the doubt creeping into the room. But what Judge Langston didn't know was that Lisa had come prepared. She had something up her sleeve, something that would turn the entire courtroom upside down. Then, just as Judge Langston leaned back in her chair, confident she had humiliated Lisa beyond repair, the detective pulled out a file. Within seconds, the judge's smug expression vanished. Because what was in that file? Enough evidence to change everything. And in just 7 minutes, the judge who thought she controlled the law would be the one in handcuffs. The room fell silent. Judge Langston's confidence flickered for the first time as Lisa calmly placed the thick file on the witness stand. The detective didn't have to say a word. The weight of the moment spoke for itself. The defense attorney shifted uncomfortably, glancing at the judge, who quickly masked her unease with a forced smile. "What exactly is that, Detective Carter?" Langston asked, her voice sharp, controlled. Lisa let the tension build, flipping open the file with deliberate care. "This," she said, her voice steady, "is proof that justice in this courtroom has been bought and sold." A murmur spread through the gallery. The prosecutor sat up straighter, while the jury exchanged glances. The judge's face darkened. Lisa took a deep breath. She had worked for months to uncover the truth. It started with whispers. An officer let off too easily, a case dismissed under suspicious circumstances, criminals walking free without explanation. Then she found patterns, cases where Judge Langston had personally intervened, rulings that made no sense, and sealed documents that should never have been sealed. But the real proof, that came when Lisa got her hands on financial records linking the judge to a well-known crime syndicate. Langston's voice cut through the air. "I'll remind you, Detective, that baseless accusations hold no weight in my courtroom." Lisa didn't flinch. "You're right, Your Honor. That's why I brought receipts." She slid a paper from the file and held it up. Bank transactions. Large sums of money moving into offshore accounts, all linked to cases you presided over. The judge's mask cracked. "That's enough," she snapped. "This is irrelevant." But Lisa wasn't done. "And then there's this." She tapped another document. A signed order dismissing charges against a known crime boss, filed before the case was even heard. The room erupted. The prosecutor scrambled to examine the papers. The jury whispered in shock. Lisa met the judge's gaze. "You tried to humiliate me, Your Honor. But the truth is, you were never in control." Langston's hands gripped the bench. 7 minutes had never felt so long. Judge Langston's face remained still, but her fingers tightened around the gavel. The entire courtroom was shifting. What was meant to be a routine testimony had turned into a full-blown exposé. The prosecutor hurriedly skimmed through the documents Lisa had presented, his expression growing more serious with every page. Even the defense attorney, who had smirked along with the judge earlier, now sat frozen, processing what this meant for his client and himself. Lisa could feel the weight of every stare, but she didn't waver. She had been waiting for this moment. It wasn't just about this case. It was about every innocent person who had been denied justice, every criminal who had walked free because the system was rigged. She thought about the families she had spoken to, the officers who had whispered warnings to her, afraid to say too much. She thought about the night she had been followed, the car that had appeared in her rearview mirror again and again, the anonymous calls telling her to back off. Judge Langston let out a sharp breath. "Detective Carter, you are overstepping. This courtroom does not exist for baseless conspiracies." Her voice was firm, but there was something underneath it now, something that hadn't been there before. Fear. Lisa turned to the prosecutor. "If you compare these financial transactions to the cases she ruled on, you'll find a pattern. The same money trail, the same names, the same outcomes." Before the prosecutor could respond, the doors to the courtroom suddenly opened. A man in a dark suit walked in, followed by two uniformed officers. The tension thickened. Lisa recognized him immediately. U.S. Attorney David Grant. If he was here, things were bigger than she had imagined. Judge Langston's jaw clenched. "This is highly irregular." Grant's voice was calm but firm. "Your Honor, I think we need to have a private conversation." The courtroom buzzed with whispers. Lisa kept her eyes on the judge. Langston had spent years controlling the law, bending it to serve her own interests. But now, for the first time, the law was looking right back at her, and it wasn't going to blink. Judge Langston's grip on the gavel tightened, her knuckles white. The courtroom, which had been buzzing with whispers, fell into a tense silence as U.S. Attorney David Grant took a step forward. His presence alone shifted the energy in the room. He wasn't here for theatrics. He was here because something serious was about to go down. Lisa didn't move, didn't even breathe as she watched the judge. For months, she had been tracking the corruption, collecting evidence, connecting the dots. And now, the woman who had spent years humiliating others from the bench was seconds away from losing control. Langston's voice was steady, but the slight tremor in her hand betrayed her. "Mr. Grant, I suggest you take a seat. This is my courtroom, and I will not tolerate disruptions." Grant's expression didn't change. "Your Honor, we have reason to believe that ongoing criminal activity is affecting the integrity of this court." His tone was calm, measured, but his words carried weight. "And given the evidence just presented, I believe it would be best if we spoke privately, now." Lisa's heart pounded. This was it. The moment where everything would either come crashing down or explode into something bigger. She stole a glance at the jury. Some looked confused, others intrigued. They knew something wasn't right, but they didn't yet understand how deep it went. Judge Langston took a slow breath, her mind racing. She had ruled over this courtroom for years, untouchable, beyond suspicion. But now she could feel the walls closing in. "I am the authority here," she snapped, her mask slipping just a little, "and I will decide what is relevant in my courtroom." Lisa leaned forward. "Then let's talk about this." She held up another paper, one that made the judge go completely still. The final piece of the puzzle. A document that tied her to more than just bribes. A document that could take this from corruption to conspiracy. The judge's lips parted slightly, but no words came out. For the first time, she had nothing to say. Lisa could feel it. The fall was coming, and it was going to be loud. Judge Langston stared at the document in Lisa's hand, her usual arrogance replaced with something else. Panic. It was subtle, just a flicker in her eyes, but Lisa caught it. The judge wasn't just cornered. She was calculating, weighing her options. Before she could react, Grant stepped closer, lowering his voice just enough to keep the jury and spectators on edge. "Your Honor, I suggest you think carefully before you say another word." The tension was suffocating. The prosecutor had stopped flipping through the documents, now watching Langston like a hawk. The defense attorney, who had been so smug before, shifted in his seat, sensing that whatever deal had protected his client was unraveling fast. Lisa set the paper down on the witness stand, tapping it lightly. "This isn't just about money, is it?" Her voice was calm, but inside, her pulse was racing. She had spent so much time focused on bribery and case manipulation, but this document, this signature, suggested something deeper, something darker. Langston's eyes darted to the court officer standing near the bench. A small, almost imperceptible glance, but Lisa saw it, and so did Grant. That's when it happened. The courtroom doors burst open again. Another man in a suit rushed in, his expression tense. He walked straight to Grant and leaned in, whispering something urgent. Whatever it was, it made Grant's jaw tighten. Lisa's stomach dropped. Something wasn't right. Grant exhaled sharply before turning back to Langston. "We need to clear this courtroom immediately." A wave of confusion rippled through the crowd. Even the judge hesitated. "On what grounds?" she asked, her voice not as sharp as before. Grant's gaze was ice cold. "Because we just uncovered evidence that this case isn't the only one you've tampered with." He glanced at Lisa. "And someone out there doesn't want this truth coming out." Lisa felt the shift in the air. This wasn't just about a corrupt judge anymore. This was bigger. And now, it wasn't just Langston who was in danger. The tension in the courtroom snapped like a live wire. Murmurs turned to shouts as confusion spread through the crowd. The bailiff called for order, but the energy had shifted. This was no longer a simple corruption case. Something much bigger was at play, and Lisa could feel it in her bones. Judge Langston's breathing was unsteady now. She wasn't just facing exposure, she was afraid. Her eyes darted around the room, searching for an escape. But there was none. Grant motioned to the officers near the door. "Everyone except court officials, jurors, and law enforcement needs to leave." Now, his voice was firm, leaving no room for argument. Lisa could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on her. This wasn't just about the judge. There was someone else, someone pulling the strings from behind the scenes. And if Grant had just uncovered new evidence, it meant the case had reached dangerous territory. Then, just as the last few spectators were being ushered out, Lisa noticed something. The court officer near the judge, the one Langston had glanced at moments ago, wasn't moving. His hand hovered near his belt, too close to his weapon. Lisa's instincts kicked in. "Grant." Before she could finish, the officer lunged. Chaos erupted. Chairs scraped against the floor, shouts filled the room, and in one heart-stopping second, the officer pulled his gun, aiming straight at Lisa. But Langston moved first. With a desperate, almost primal instinct, the judge reached for the officer's arm, shoving it just as the gun fired. The shot missed Lisa by inches, embedding into the wooden panel behind her. Officers tackled the man to the ground in a frenzy, disarming him before he could take another shot. Lisa stood frozen, her breath caught in her throat, but her eyes were locked on Langston. The judge, the woman who had humiliated her, who had twisted justice for personal gain, had just saved her life. Langston turned to Lisa, her face pale, her hands trembling, and in a voice that was barely above a whisper, she said, "I was never the one in charge." Lisa's heart pounded as she realized the truth. The judge wasn't the mastermind. She was just another piece on the board, and the real power behind it all was still out there. The courtroom was in chaos. Officers restrained the man who had nearly killed Lisa, dragging him out as Grant barked orders to secure the building. But Lisa couldn't focus on any of it. Her eyes remained on Langston, the once powerful judge who now looked small, broken. Lisa stepped closer, her voice low but firm. "Who's behind this?" Langston let out a shaky breath. "You think I had a choice?" She gave a hollow laugh, shaking her head. "I was just another pawn, detective, just like you."